life?
Yes.
Oh, man.
I have been living with chronic sinus issues for over 20 years.
Awful.
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, I have it even today. I'm all flamed up and everything.
I took some oregano oil. I think it's helping. Oregano, essential oil.
Ooh, that Kool-Aid's good, Heather. Yeah, I dig that. I dig that. But did you get the did you understand the sermon outline that I gave you yesterday? Okay.
From the main theme.
Yeah. But did you? You don't have to repeat it back. Did you understand it? Okay. Is there any questions on that before we begin?
Not right now. I'm gonna have that ready for next Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah. So I just want to make sure there wasn't any pressing questions, so that way we could get them ironed out. Because that is called homiletics. That is called the homiletical aptitude, believe it or not. There's a big old homiletics is the art of preaching, and that little template I gave you is called the homiletical aptitude. It's what they teach you in just main old homiletics class. And as I said, I had two classes. I had homiletics and I had expository preaching. Expository preaching is what you would use to preach epistles and a narrative, and that is harder, and I had to take a whole class on it. So when we get to that, it's not going to be as easy as me giving you a template and saying, hey, have at it. We'll spend several weeks teaching you how to...
So the textual sermon was the one that you taught me?
Yeah, I taught you the textual sermon. Just one or two verses that have all the points and the proposition built in, and you can bring it out. Because the Bible's full of textual sermons. They're everywhere. Like I was saying that even in Matthew, from time to time, I'll be teaching textual sermons, because think about when we get to Matthew 28, 18 through 20. What is the Great Commission? That's a textual sermon. You know, how do we perform the Great Commission? We make disciples, baptize them, teach them to observe all things, and focus on the presence of Christ, because lo, He's with us always. So there's your 4 points on how to do the Great Commission. See, and they're all within the same verse. So even when you're preaching through a book, like the book of Matthew or something, every now and then, in a narrative, you're going to come across those verses that tends to lend itself very well to a textual sermon. And you're going to say, well, I'm going to preach this verse alone because all the points are there. You know? So, but the other one, other than expository, because expository is what I do with Matthew every Sunday. It's when I'm preaching through a narrative or through, let's say, an epistle of Paul or Peter, and you might get an entire chapter or a section of a chapter, and you're pulling the points out of a chapter. So one point might be a paragraph within the passage. It might involve 2 or 3 verses. Those are harder because you got to kind of study the chapter out and find what are the points here. What's the proposition? What's the points? Now, a topical sermon is more of a doctrinal thing. It's when you find, for instance, I was explaining to Heather, a great example of a topical sermon would be don't let incorrect communication proceed out of your mouth. There's your proposition. Okay, what's your points? You'll go throughout the Bible and find the points to it. What are some examples in Scripture of corrupt communication? It'd be lying, slander, blasphemy, gossip, complaining. And you would go throughout Scripture and find those examples, and the topical sermons are the ones that you kind of bounce around in the Bible with. You get your points from throughout the Bible to prove one point. You know, so so you kind of get the point there. Those are pretty easy too, because topical sermons are good to preach doctrines through. Doctrines, because you could just skip all over the Bible and do it, you know, and that's kind of cool. Like spiritual gifts would be a topical sermon. You know, what are your spiritual gifts? And each spiritual gift is just a point, you know. The fruits of the Spirit would be a topical sermon. Well, fruits of the Spirit is probably a textual sermon. They're all in one verse. But you get the point.
The second coming of Jesus.
Yeah, and if you wanted to preach on the second coming of Jesus, you would find the preposition that you want to do. Like, what are the events that surround the like the rapture? What events will people recognize at their rapture? Or what events do you look for at the rapture? And then you would list out those events as your points.
Yeah.
So it'd be a topic. Those are real fun because you can get super creative with them.
Yeah.
You know. But we'll get to all of that. But for right now, guys, let's get back on topic here, and let's go ahead and look at Daniel, because one thing that I was wanting to focus on with Daniel, everyone, was this. When we think of Daniel, let's draw our map back up on the board here. We have the Mediterranean Sea right here. So this is the Mediterranean, and off here to the side, I'm going to get a green marker because it's going to look better. You have Israel with the Sea of Galilee, with the Jordan River, and the Dead Sea down here, which means down here would have been the Sinai Peninsula, and here's Arabia. Here's the Red Sea.
Arabia.
Here's the Red Sea, and here's the Sinai Peninsula.
Sinai Peninsula.
And here's Israel in the Mediterranean Sea, and way off here is Babylon. Way off here in the east. I mean, about roughly 1,000 miles. I mean, it's way out there. So this certainly isn't the scale. So that shows you how far off, you know, they would have had to exile these people. It wasn't a little trek across the desert. I mean, it was a hike. It was a hike. It was bad. But what I'm wanting to point out here is, how do we apply everything that we've learned in Daniel so far to our life? And the one thing that I'm wanting to point out is this, because since we got the map up here, you got the map in your head, let's kind of apply this. What's the big picture so far? And the big picture is this. You have Babylon, which is in Mesopotamia. And as we said, how many Babylons were there in Mesopotamia during the Tower of Babel? You had 7 to 8 Babylons. One of them is Babel's. One of them is, contested. So they say 7 to 8 of them. One of them's contested. And we know the Tower of Babel was Eridu. And Eridu is where the Tower of Babel was, and that's the one that where Genesis chapter 11, 10 and 11 took place, was Eridu. Well, let's think of it this way. Let's draw a little map. You have Eridu here, and up here, just north of Eridu, you have the Babel that turns into Babylon over time. So, and here's Eridu. So, the whole fiasco at Eridu happens, and people get their languages confused, and they start to disperse. The Tower of Babel, that's the Genesis 10 and 11 fiasco, the Tower of Babel. Now, when they dispersed, and I'll go ahead and put down Tower of Babel, what did these people take with them? They took with them, when they dispersed, their religion, their philosophy, their style of governing, so pretty much their government.
Yep.
They would have taken, what else? They would have taken
Language.
well, no, because the languages are confused.
They're taking their new language.
Yeah, they're taking their new language, but their style of government, but number one, their philosophy would have equaled their rebellion. Their rebellion. So that rebellion against God and His ways. So I want you to think of Babylon as this. You had the dispersion of all of this stuff, but it remained in Mesopotamia, and Babylon almost became like the parent of it, the parent or the origin of it. So even though all that garbage went dispersed throughout the land, it did remain in the land around the Babylon area, and there it just grew. So you had it in both places. You had the philosophy and the rebellion and the false religions and that tyrannical form of government and everything bad about Babel being spread throughout the world. But we have to remember, it still remained there as well. A remnant of it still remained in Mesopotamia, and over time became what we know as Babylon. They named it after one of those Babels. It became Babylon. So that's important, because even though this stuff is everywhere, I mean, it ends up absolutely everywhere, you still have the parent that produced it. So with that in mind, let's draw a little timeline up here. You have Babel, which is the Tower of Babel, and then you have the dispersion. And that dispersion during the Tower of Babel went everything. So now the whole world is like Babel. The entire world is like Babel. Everything is like Babylon. Babylon becomes the template, of the entire world. Everything's patterned after Babylon. So once it becomes like this, the whole world is corrupt. And what does God do? As we said before, at this moment, we still have the timeline. At this moment, at the corruption, you get a branch. And this is your counterculture. And the counterculture is Abraham and Israel. You have two things going now. So therefore you have two timelines going now. You have the pagan Babel, philosophy going, but down here you have something new going. And what's the new thing going?
God makes a nation.
God makes a nation. Yes. So you have the God Israel side. And that's very important, because ever since then, the whole world has been corrupted by the Babel philosophy. Everything. That is where it started. That's the origin, and it's been there ever since.
So a lot of Mayan pyramids kind of look like Egyptian pyramids, and
yeah,
because
that's exactly it.
Because
it's an origin.
I was looking at how the Mayan pyramid looks like a pyramid in Asia.
Yeah.
It looked like it's identical almost.
Yeah, and you hit the nail right on the head, because they're identical. There's pyramids on every continent but Antarctica. Why? Because they all came from one origin. They're all patterned after the tower.
No one can live in Antarctica, right?
Yeah, right. That's the only reason why it's not down there. But the point is they're all patterned after the tower.
Yeah.
See, everyone is building their society around that ideology.
So the Tower of Babel might have been a pyramid?
It was a ziggurat.
The ziggurat looks like a pyramid?
Well, the ziggurat was...
square?
Well, I should have a picture of it here on the computer that I don't need the internet for. Let me pull up a picture for you.
Ziggurat.
Let's see here. We'll just type in because has a ziggurat. we'll let it pull up here.
Oh, I got one.
Right here's a ziggurat.
That's great.
Similar to that.
So that's, where's that? It's not a pyramid. That's.
It's similar to a pyramid.
So then we're gonna keep on like building up and up.
Yeah, the ziggurat. Here's another view of it. It would have had steps that kind of switchbacked up, but it was very pyramid-like. And
It has to be pyramid-like. It gets narrower at the top, right?
yeah, like right here. That's a good picture of it.
Like that.
A ziggurat.
So
So that's what the Tower of Babel would have probably been like. And you could see where that would have morphed into a pyramid quite easily. You know, it's a very similar shape. So that's the idea. But as that counterculture goes, we have to remember something, guys, is that now you have two parallel timelines that are going. And what does the Bible name the pagan timeline throughout Scripture? They'll always kind of refer to it as Babylon. They'll always kind of refer to it as Babylon because that's where it started. Later on, here in Genesis 9, why do they call it Babylon? Because right now it's the origin.
the pagan culture.
Yeah, the pagan culture. It's the origin, but
Yeah.
also you have the Daniel 2 statue too. It's the head. So you have two caveats of why the whole pagan ideology and why the whole pagan culture is kind of referred to as Babylon, because it is patterned after that ideology. And once again, what is the ideology that it's patterned off of? It's patterned off of, it would be rebellion against God. That's the first thing that it's patterned off of. It is humanistic. Because remember, at the Garden of Eden, not the Tower of Babel, what did they say? We will make a name for ourselves. It's humanistic. It's a rebellion against God. It's wanting to go against who He is, and it's making a name for yourself. So it's humanistic. It is self-governing. So you leave God out of it to form your government. It is pagan in religion, right? And in reality, it's just relativistic.
Relativistic.
Meaning you make your own truth. That's more or less what it is. And you could categorize all of this under Romans 1, 18 through 32. It's the suppression of truth. You can categorize all of it under that. That's essentially what the Babylonian pagan government, let's get cooled down in here a little bit. The Babylonian pagan government is fashioned after it. And what nations follow this mold? All of them, including us.
Including us?
Including
We
us.
have a pyramid on a dollar bill, right? So.
Yeah, but that's not really that.
No.
Well, that's a good observation, but that's not really what I'm going at. I'm talking about the philosophy behind it, the characteristics
I
of it,
definitely believe in it.
all of it. Now you have the counterculture down here, which is the Judeo-Christian, and it was formed with Abraham, and then finally Mosaic law,
Mosaic.
and then the Messiah. So you have those things that were formed as that counterculture. Because remember, all this is showing is the continuation of that counterculture. And this is an attempt to go back to what time? The time right after the flood where everyone believed. So this is an attempt to go back to the Noahic mindset. the idea that everything is biblical.
Time right before the flood, before everybody believed.
Well, right after the flood, whenever the earth was cleansed and everyone got off the ark and everyone on earth was a believer.
Only 8 people.
8 people. Yeah, really. But that mindset, that's what it is. See, and it shows you, Oscar, it didn't take long for it to get corrupted and to go down the toilet.
So
It didn't take long at all.
So is Trump's slogan MAGA correct? Was America ever great? Because
Yeah, I'm going to get to that. Because here's the reason. But biblical, at least, let's call it biblically based.
Yeah.
God-fearing.
God-fearing. Yeah.
And biblical morality. That's the thing. Now, to answer your question, America. What made America truly great? And here's the thing, kid. Not just America. We got to think of something else, because along this timeline, you can almost represent it like this. At some point, unfortunately, you had another split. And I'll keep it just going like this, but you had another split. You had, boom. This happened during the Enlightenment, when humanism and rationality crept into the church, and they kind of, what happened? Blended together. So now you had most of the church blending with the paganism, and you had this little remnant of true believers out there in the sticks holding to the Bible. But that only lasted for a couple hundred years, because around here, let's say, 1517, you had the Reformation. And the Reformation actually got the church out of that pagan mindset and back down on the straight and narrow. All right? Now, all of Europe, there for a while, outside of probably France and Italy, were what you would call Reformation countries.
Outside of the Catholic.
Yeah, outside the Catholic stronghold. So I'd say Spain, Portugal, France, Italy. Those are just the few that were still Catholic strongholds. But most of Europe, like Switzerland, Germany, Britain, most of Europe became Reformation countries. Like Ireland would have been another Catholic stronghold.
Yeah.
But a lot of them turned into Reformation countries. Britain being one of them, the Church of England and all that. And we branched off from Britain and started America. So technically we're a Reformation country.
We're a baby.
But the thing is what made America and these Reformation countries truly great? We were never a Christian nation in the truest sense of the term, as in patterning our government solely off of the Bible. We blended it with pagan ideology, most definitely. There's a lot of Roman influence, there's a lot of Greek influence, there's a lot of, just look on the back of our dollar bill, like you said with the pyramid. There's a lot of pagan influence mixed into it. But there's a lot of Judeo-Christian influence mixed into it too. And that Judeo-Christian influence provided us with that. With the Noahic mindset, with the biblically based government and religion, with the God-fearing attitude, with the biblical morality. It gave us that. And that's why we were blessed so much. We might not have been biblical in the biggest sense, but we had a biblically based foundation. It was based on the Bible. Mm-hmm. And that's why we were great. Do you realize, Oscar, that throughout the history of the church, what country has sent out the most missionaries in the history of the church?
United States.
Yes.
Mm.
Absolutely. In our little 250, 300 year history, we have sent out more missionaries than anyone.
More missionaries than any other country.
Yeah. Now tell me,
Yeah.
was America once great? Better believe it was.
Mm.
Is Trump able to return to that?
No.
No, because I don't think he can restore that.
It's too late.
I think it's too late. I don't think he can restore that. I think we're too far gone. You know? He's just one man. And I don't even know if he's a Christian, really. At times he has these little glimmers of hope, but most of the time he looks and sounds as pagan as they come. So I don't think he's capable of bringing us up to that.
Yeah.
So that's the point that we're making. So at the end of the day, in Revelation 17, 18, and 19, when they say Babylon has fallen, this is what they're referring to. The Messiah has come back, and he is tearing down the corrupted culture, and the counterculture is taken over. That's the idea. The counterculture is taking over. That's the idea. Babylon has fallen. Does that make sense?
It's not a literal place.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it is sticking with how the Bible presents Babylon as that figurative reference back to the origin of the pagan mindset and that Daniel 2 statue. I think that's how I would interpret that. When he said Babylon has fallen, he's essentially saying the Daniel 2 statue has fallen. The stone without hands has fallen out of heaven and taken out the feet. The statue has fallen. I think that's how I would interpret it biblically. Because it makes the most sense. Because right after those verses in Revelation that says Babylon has fallen, it gives you what brought on the fall, and it was the return of Jesus. The context is showing us the return of the Messiah that caused Babylon to fall. And if you interpret that with Daniel 2, I take that as meaning the statue is fallen. Because remember, all Daniel 2 is just the remnant of way back during the Tower of Babel time. All Babylon is just the leftover crud after the dispersion. It was like the parent, the origin of the corruption of every other country on earth. It was what originated this mess. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to explain that because I think that would help us apply the book of Daniel. Because if this is the truth, which I do take it as the truth, Oscar and Heather, but what this is pretty much saying is everything that the people in this book are going through applies directly to us because we're in the same exact culture.
Yeah.
We're in the same exact mess. Our government is being ran just like Babylon because it is kind of a child of Babylon. That's the idea. It's a child of Babylon.
So, like, it's too late. We should just wait for Jesus to come back.
Well, read 1st and 2nd Thessalonians.
What's that one again?
That 1st and 2nd Thessalonians teaches totally against that because that would be our notion. It's like, well, there's no hope, so let's just lay down and die. No, Paul says to remain faithful, to look for the coming of the Lord, to work with your hands, to carry on life, to win souls, to try to improve the culture as much as you can until he's coming. Don't just lay down and die. Always fight back against the Babylonian thing, but realize that the closer you get to the end, the worse it's going to get. Apostasy will abound. Apostasy will run free. It will run rampant, and things are just going to deteriorate and get worse.
They're going to deteriorate and get way worse.
Way. And we're seeing it. Like I said, I mean, look at our culture.
Oh, man.
Doesn't our culture doesn't this explain our culture like to a T?
I wish I was born in the 40s.
No, you don't, because then you have to deal with Hitler.
I mean, I know that I think that was still better. I still would deal with
yeah, in a way, yeah.
I don't like my generation.
No, I don't either. We agree. But did you? But Heather, did you see the general thought process I had there of how to think through the book of Daniel and to make sense of it? Because that's kind of where we are. So that's why Daniel's my favorite book, because when I see what Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego went through, and the junk that they had to deal with and how they handled it, it is a direct evaluation and instruction on how we should handle it, because we are sitting under the same garbage.
We're sitting under the same garbage. Okay.
You know, we're sitting under the same exact garbage. All they were doing is sitting in the parent origin of the garbage everyone else has to live under. They were at where it originated. So it was just alive and well and strong there at its origin. And I think it's interesting, because where is its origin now? Baghdad. All this is in Iraq.
Iraq is terrible.
Yes.
There's no Christians there. They all died.
They all died.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Muslim country. But even prior to the Muslim takeover, back, around 1000 or 900 or whenever it happened, this is what you were looking at. It was this. It just got taken over by a Christian cult. It got taken over by Islam.
Yeah.
So but that's the point, guys. So as we read through this and we study Daniel, just know that what Daniel and his friends are going through is literally no different than what we're going through. Literally. It's the same exact culture. It's the same exact mindset. It's the same exact form of government. It's the same exact morality. Everything's the same. Now they were at the parent. They were where it's originated, so it was strong and heinous there. I mean, they were throwing people in the fiery furnaces, for crying out loud. But we are just watered down versions of that. That's all we are, because we still have a Christian, halfway pseudo-Christian influence kind of keeping that ideology at bay. That we have enough Christian influence where we haven't went full out pagan yet.
Yeah.
So the restrainers here and kind of keeping it under control. But if Christianity were outlawed and all the Christians disappeared, America would look just like that one. Just like it. And you want to kind of think of it that way. So let's in the last 15 minutes, let's go ahead and look at this then. So this is right after Persia had taken over Babylon. And so Daniel is under a new regime.
Yes, it's the Persians.
Yep, this is the Persians. So
Okay.
Daniel is under a new regime at this
Before the
point.
Persians, it was what again? It was the
Babylon.
Babylon.
And before Babylon, the Assyrians were in charge.
Assyria.
And prior to Assyria, it would have been Egypt.
Okay, Egypt was in charge of that area.
Yeah, Egypt. I don't know if they went all the way out, but I don't know if they went all the way out to Babylon. But I'm talking about world empire.
Okay.
And we'll go over that later because Revelation touches on that. So I'll have to coach you through that once we get to that point in your Sunday school lesson. Because I forget which chapter it's in, but it does touch on that. So, but it says, it pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be over the whole kingdom. See, I love the redundancy of the well, this is still Aramaic, right? No, this is still Aramaic. It's like, set over the kingdom, 120 satraps to be over the whole kingdom. It's like the redundancy. Yeah. And over these three governors, of whom Daniel was one. So Daniel got a promotion. He was now a governor. He's one of the top dogs. that the satraps might give account to them, so that the king would suffer no loss. Then this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him. Now, here's the thing. An excellent spirit. They have that in lowercase. But what spirit would have been in him? I don't know the Hebrew per se there, but should that spirit be capitalized? Possibly, because he's been working off of the Holy Spirit the entire time. So let's just keep that in mind. And the king gave thought to setting him over the whole realm. So the governors and satraps fought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom. So why would all the Persian/Babylonian governors and satraps be conspiring against Daniel? Because Daniel has been lifted up to pretty much second command. Why is everyone trying to tear him down? The same reason why people try to tear down everything. He is it's just anti-Semitism, guys. That's all it is. It's anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
They hate Jews.
So what was his,
it's like,
what was his position when they were trying to do this?
the head magician.
Was he still second in command?
No, he has been promoted up from head magician to second command at this point. The new regime found something in him.
With the Persians that just took over?
The Persians, yeah.
Can you remind me what gave that promotion?
It doesn't say. Well, the writing on the wall might have done it.
Well, the writing on the wall got the king that
possibly. That's the only thing in the past.
That king was killed, right? That king was son of Nebuchadnezzar, right?
Yeah. But the Bible is unclear what caused him to get the promotion. But the kingdom on the wall, the writing on the wall would have been a good candidate for it. The fact that Daniel foretold that and it came true. I mean, if the Persian leadership got wind of that, I could see where that would have earned him a promotion.
We'll just promote him.
Just because he has some sort of prophetic understanding that no one else has. You know? So that's the idea there. So the governments and satraps fought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find no charge or fault because he was faithful, nor was there any error or fault found in him. So another word for saying this is Daniel was blameless.
Blameless, yes.
He was blameless. You could examine his life and find nothing to accuse him of. He was blameless. He never said anything to bring any charge against him. He never did anything to bring a charge against him. His conduct was holy. Because holy conduct is called blamelessness. Because remember, there's a difference between...
Holiness is not blameless.
Yeah, because there's a difference between conduct and heart. Holy conduct is blamelessness.
Outward.
Yeah, but a holy heart
Inward.
is actually called holiness.
Inward.
Yep, exactly. So this is inward,
Inside you.
and this is outward. Now, one thing that we have to remember that between inward and outward, if this isn't somewhat holy, neither is this going to be. But the point is this doesn't have to be perfectly holy for that to be. I mean, because you're always going to have some sort of wickedness within your heart. But you can have that wickedness in your heart taken care of to the point that the outward blamelessness isn't affected. And that's where Daniel had been. He had essentially been blameless. Then these men said, "We shall not find any charge against this Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God." So the point is he wasn't breaking any Babylonian or Persian laws. So they had to turn to Scripture and say, okay, can we twist something?
Yes,
Yeah. So these governors and satraps thronged before the king and said thus to him, "King Darius, live forever. All of the governors of the kingdom and administrators and the satraps and the counselors and the advisors have consulted together. That's we're conspiring. You know,
Evil.
That's a conspiracy. That's all that is. It's no consulting. Listen to that. This is a deep state conspiracy going on here.
Yeah.
Do you see the similarities between the United States and what's going on here, guys? It's a deep state conspiracy where people come together to try to overthrow someone. Doesn't this sound familiar?
Talking about Trump?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the same mindset. See, there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing new at all. So it is to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter. Therefore, King Darius signed the written decree. Because remember, the law of the Medes and Persians, once written down, not even the king can go back on it. It is set in stone. That's a historical fact, and the Bible is bringing that out here. So, what are they catching Darius in? They're essentially catching Darius in a matter where he had a lapse of judgment. See, but think about it. How did they get Darius to agree to this? What did they appeal to? They appealed to his pride. Exactly.
Because he's God.
Yeah, because they're pointing out that he is the one in charge.
Yeah.
He is the one that can set the decree. That no one can pray to anyone but you. See, they're appealing to his humanistic pagan pride. And it worked. So what can we think of there then? When Satan wants to manipulate us to get us to do something contrary to the will of God,
Yeah.
what is he going to appeal to?
Our senses and our weaknesses.
He's going to appeal to where we're prideful and where we're sinful and where we're weak, and he's going to try to bolster us in some ungodly area, so we take our eyes off of God and put it on our humanistic self. He's going to try to get us going back to our humanistic mindset. That I am the one in charge. That I am the one that controls my own destiny. That's where Satan attacks. They get it on ourself. Now, when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home. Alright, so Daniel was aware of the decree. It wasn't a secret to him. He wasn't acting in ignorance. He knew. And in his upper room, which is interesting, upper room, that's a Jewish thing. That shows you at this point they had already built their own houses, and Daniel had his upper room. That's a very Jewish thing. In his upper room, with his windows open toward Jerusalem, boy, the Muslims really take that, don't they? Toward Jerusalem. See, the Muslims have Mecca. See, they're just counterfeiting everything, guys.
Is Mecca in Jerusalem? Where's Mecca? Saudi Arabia?
Saudi Arabia, yeah.
Okay.
He knelt down on his knees 3 times a day. Boy, isn't this a stinking counterfeit by the Muslims counterfeit this. You know? Muslims do it 5 times a day, but they're still counterfeiting it. 3 times a day, and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since the early days. So this is the third illustration of a major theme in this book that has to happen in a pagan place. It is called civil
disobedience.
Yes. Woo. We have permission to do civil disobedience. When they make a law that's against the law of God, we are commanded to disobey that law.
Is it like don't tread on me? Is that the same kind of like
same
don't take my guns away? Is it the same thing?
Well, here's the thing. I do believe that we have a God-given right to bear arms, according to Luke.
Yeah.
So, in a weird, twisted way, I guess so.
So that's civil disobedience.
But it's a similar idea. Don't tread on me.
Yeah.
I have a higher... Now, I don't want to say that the Constitution is equal to the Word of God. Of course not.
It's not.
But in the realm of the United States, the Constitution, other than the Bible, of course, is the highest authority. So what the Don't Tread on Me is talking about is if you make any law that goes against the Bill of Rights, don't come treading here. I'm going to bite you.
Yeah.
I'm going to fight back because I have a higher standard than the bogus, illegal law you just passed. Because my standard trumps your law. And that's what Don't Tread on Me's talking about. So that's a good illustration of that. So that's essentially what you have here. Daniel's saying, I have this law called the Mosaic Law that trumps any pagan junk that you can pump out. So don't come treading on me. I'm going to break it.
This is my religion.
This is my standard. My standard is higher than your standard. So that's what he's coming here. Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. And they went before the king and spoke concerning the king's decree. You have signed a decree that every man who petitions any god or man within 30 days except you, O king, will be cast into the den of lions. And the king answered and said, the thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter. See, it's like, you see, he has to hold to it, guys, because what you're seeing here is two foundations. Darius has the law of Medes and Persians. Daniel has
The law of
Moses.
Law of Moses.
Law of Moses. You have two foundations, and they have built their whole society on those two foundations. Daniel ain't budging, but unfortunately, because of his worldview, Darius can't either. Because Darius' worldview says, I can't break this law. It is my ultimate standard. It's only for 30 days. It's not something that is set in stone forever. It's only for a month. But I can't break it. See, so do you see? So keep that in mind too. They only made it for 30 days. Why did they do that? Because all of these government officials trying to conspire against Daniel had no intention of keeping that forever. They didn't want it to be a permanent thing. It was all for the sole purpose of trapping Daniel. That was it. Because they knew that Daniel had that different foundation and he wasn't going to budge from it. They knew that.
They wanted him gone.
They wanted him gone, and they knew he would not compromise his foundation. So they came up with a different foundation to trap him against his own.
Out of envy.
Out of envy. So if you take that and you go back to this and say, we shall not find any charge against this Daniel unless if we find it against him concerning the law of his God. What they're saying is we're going to look at his foundation.
Yeah.
And we're going to see, can we make up any law that's going to force Daniel to go against our foundation and only stand on his own? And they found it. Because they looked at the law of Moses and they realized, oh, Daniel cannot legally pray to another human being. He's only going to pray to his God. So if we make a law saying that it's illegal to do that, we got him according to his law. Very easy, you know. So they answered and said before the king, that Daniel, who is one of the captains from Judah, that Daniel. See, that Daniel. And notice something. This is interesting. You see that you have a regime change, because what are they calling him?
Captives.
But they're calling him by what name?
Daniel.
They're calling him by his Jewish name. He's not Belteshazzar anymore. Because there's a different regime in charge. And one thing about the Persians was this, Oscar. The Persians allowed you to keep your national identity. They didn't try to change you. So they let him go back to call himself Daniel.
Yeah.
You know? And that's one reason why the Persians allowed the Jews to go back to Jerusalem, because it was them keeping their national identity. So that's all coming back. That's just one of the things that the Persians did. They tried to hold their empire together by allowing all their captives to kind of pacify all their captives to be tolerant. So that was the idea there. So it says, does not show due regard to you, O king, for the decree that you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. So it's like, haha, we got him. And the king, when he had heard these words, was greatly displeased with himself. So now he's feeling regret because his pride got in the way and he got back into the corner, and now he's between a rock and a hard place, right? And set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. So he was fighting and reasoning, what kind of loophole can I find to get Daniel out of this mess? Then these men approached the king and said to the king, know, O king, that it is the law of the Medes and Persians that no decree or statute which the king establishes may be changed. So the king gave the command, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. But the king spoke, saying to Daniel, your God, whom you serve continually, he will deliver you. See, interesting. And I wonder where that comes from. I wonder if Darius heard the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in that fiery furnace. And if Yahweh had a reputation.
He did.
I think he did, because look at how Darius phrased that. He will deliver you. Darius kind of knew that Daniel was going to be okay. So that belief came from somewhere. You know, God had a reputation there. And that was the idea. Then a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and the signets of his lords, that the purpose concerning Daniel might not be changed. And how long is it? We have a ways to go, so we'll pick up next week on the deliverance, because we're out of time. But I wanted to take time to just remind you all of how to apply this book to your life and why this is so significant. Because the main thing is remember, you've got to interpret this in the light of Daniel 2. Because we are right in the midst of that statue. I mean, the statue is still alive and well right now. We're under the Babylonian pagan mindset. The pagan mindset is attempting to rule us. And we have to decide, which culture are we? Are we a part of that pagan Babylonian culture, or are we a part of the counterculture?
You say that culture is synonymous with the world?
Yeah. So which one are we? Are we of the counterculture of Abraham, or are we of the original Tower of Babel rebellion culture? Now that's the side that you got to choose. Which timeline, which cultural line are you treading on? Because all these guys in the Bible that we read, this is the moral of the story, no matter who we are, from Joshua all the way to stinking apostles, all the way to the church age, we're all on the same culture, guys.
Yep.
We're all trying to tread the same mindset.
Everybody who's lived after Abraham has to deal with the Babylon.
Yep. So we're trying to adhere to the counterculture. Everyone is. So that should make the Bible come alive to you, knowing that you're trying to live the same life. You're in the same camp as all these guys. Yeah. And that's a big, big, big deal.
Just do not love the world, right?
Exactly.
The Bible says do not love the world. That's
exactly.
True.
So I hope that helps you, but we'll go ahead and pray, because I know you're sick. We're actually feeling better. So now it's your turn to go through a little bit of hell, so enjoy that.
It'll be fun.
But it's like,
I got finals tomorrow, so
yeah, we'll pray for you then, because you need to have a clear mind for that. Yeah. So let's go ahead and pray, and we'll bring that up. So Father, thank you for our good lesson today, Lord. And I just pray that you help Oscar through his studies and his finals tomorrow, and give him some rest and help him feel good enough to do well on his test tomorrow, Lord. But thank you for his faithfulness and for showing up to class today. And I pray that you keep us safe as we go throughout our week, and that you bring us back on Saturday if you permit, Lord. But we love you. Keep our brother Chad safe as he goes down to the Tucson area this weekend, and just know that even though we fail you all the time, that ultimately you're the one we want to please. Help us be a good, faithful member of the counterculture of your resistance against the world, and bless us for when we succeed in doing so. In Jesus' name, amen. That's another way of looking at it, is we're the resistance.
We're the resistance.
If it wasn't for the resistance, the whole world would fall into that. If it wasn't for the resistance. You know. So